Thank you. I'm Caroline Green. I'm Assistant Chief Executive at the City Council. So, like Tim told you this morning, I'm another one of those people who work with our elected members on developing our plans and strategies. So I'm going to attempt to, in my brief time, give you some of the context and considerations that the City Council's thinking through on this. You've seen this slide several times already today, so I won't go through it again. But when it comes to the topic of buildings, similarly as Tim was telling you this morning, we need to be considering this against other priorities for the city. And I mean that perhaps the most obvious one is ensuring that we are meeting the housing needs of the city, which I'll come back to in a minute. But it's also about enabling development to support the local economy, meet the needs of businesses and protect jobs. It's about protecting the historic environment that we live in and ensuring that we've got plans for things like regeneration and investing in deprived areas. So to take the affordability of housing challenge, just some facts to illustrate that. We have got one of the worst affordability challenges in the country. Nowhere else in the country are house prices 17 times average earnings. Average rents in the city are about 57% of average monthly income. We've got more than 3,000 households on our waiting list, and an increase in recent years in people either at risk of or experiencing homelessness. So last year we had 1,000 people come to the council who were supported with advice to prevent homelessness. So it is a really critical challenge, and of course what that means is we've got to build many more houses. Our local plan, the evidence underpinning that, suggests we need in the region of 28,000 houses to meet Oxford's need by 2036. Now, not all of those houses can be built in the city because we are a very tightly constrained area, but about 11,000 will be. And of that housing, about, as you can see here, 27% or a quarter of it will be built by the City Council directly through our housing company, but the vast majority delivered by other developers. Actually, before I go on to that slide, so just in the context of that, in terms of the cost of building to zero carbon, we've just heard there are different views on that, and clearly, hopefully, it will improve over time. But currently, our estimation is it's about £17,000 additional cost on a two-bed home, or £12,000 on a flat. So what that means is it will affect the number of homes that the City Council can build directly, and it has an impact on viability for developers. Now, development, housing development, all development pays for affordable housing and for transport infrastructure. So increased costs of building homes and building them carbon neutral could mean fewer affordable housing comes through. It could mean higher cost of homes if that cost is passed on to people buying it, or in extreme cases it could mean development not coming forward at all. So our local plan is the place where that tries to strike the balance. Our new local plan sets out a trajectory to get to net zero carbon by 2030 for residential, and 50% for non-residential by 2026. And that's really reflecting what we heard before about the time it's going to take for the industry to get ready and for costs to come down. The bit at the bottom, for public buildings, there is already a requirement that new buildings should be built to nearly zero carbon from that came in this year. But it's worth remembering that by 2035, of all the housing that will be in the city, 85% of it is already built. So retrofit really is the bigger and more challenging question. That just shows you the split of housing stock in Oxford, and City Council owns 13% of that stock. We've been investing in the recent years in improving that, focusing on things like insulation, boiler replacement, heating systems, and advice to tenants. So in some ways we've already picked a lot of the low-hanging fruit. We're now modelling what it will look like to retrofit our existing stock to carbon zero, and that's a piece of work that's already going on, still going on. What we do know is it's going to require significant investment in hundreds of millions, and it's not possible in half the stock. To achieve it, you need to knock it all down and rebuild it. So again, that comes back to we need to look at what is the best intervention. We also need to consider, of course, that it'd be hugely disruptive to residents and tenants. So going forward, I think what we'll be looking to do is focus our investment on where it can have the biggest impact, but also trying to align it to some of the other priorities. So to people who are in fuel poverty, to the worst performing houses, which are often in some of the most deprived areas of the city. So trying to get maximum benefits out of those regeneration programmes. And of course, when balancing retrofit against new builds, we will have to decide and continue to make decisions about where the best balance is between providing new homes to meet the need and focusing on improving the existing homes. And the last point from this slide really is that you can see that 75% more or less of housing in city is in private ownership, where the city council doesn't have direct control. So a lot of our work has got to be working with private owners and landlords on encouraging and advising them on how they can improve their properties. There's also, we're already involved in something called Cosy Homes Oxfordshire, which is exactly that, designed to help people understand and make decisions and advise them on that. I think that the last point I wanted to make, is really reflecting what we heard earlier, is we need then, therefore, to think about this sort of, I hate the word, but holistically. And to give an example, rather than putting PV solar panels on every building in Oxford, which we wouldn't be able to do anyway, but it's actually easier than you might think through the planning system. It's very challenging in conservation areas and really challenging on listed buildings, but it would be possible for a lot of places in the city. However, is that really the most sensible thing to do? Because that could be an expensive, complicated and difficult option. We might be better to be working with our neighbouring authorities on a plan for solar farms going forward. So it's we need to drill down into what's the best interventions we can make into housing and building in city, but not lose sight of that wider collective approach.